Am I on?
Yep, you guys are on and you are open to the public.
Okay. Sorry about that. Couldn't get connected. Mayor, are you ready?
Okay, yes, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
We
Go ahead,
have,
Ally.
Frank, are we open?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
Councilmember
we're
Von
open.
Rudenberg,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Canestrino,
Here.
Councilmember Pataglia,
Yeah,
Councilmember Carroll,
he went to take the
Here.
shoulder.
okay. Mayor
Is there-
LaBrus.
Here,
This meeting is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 10:4-6 et sec. Notice having been published according to law with a copy on file in the city clerk's office and a copy posted on the bulletin board in City Hall. Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act and recent regulations issued by the state of New Jersey, the following procedures will be in effect for public comment during this remote public meeting of the City Council. The public shall have an opportunity for comment during the designated public portion of this meeting. The time period for public comment is limited to 3 minutes for each speaker, and no person may address the council more than once except for speaking during an advertised public hearing for an ordinance. At the time designated for public comment, the mayor or other presiding officer of the council will recognize one speaker at a time. That speaker must identify himself or herself by full name and whether or not he or she resides in Hackensack. No other member of the public is permitted to speak unless recognized by the presiding officer, and the other remote attendees may be muted during that time if necessary to eliminate background noise. Meeting attendees shall exhibit appropriate demeanor during this meeting as required by section 37-15 of the city code. In the event any member of the public becomes disruptive at any time, that individual may be muted by the presiding officer and will receive a warning that continued disruption may result in being prevented from speaking or removed from the meeting entirely. The Zoom meeting platform has a texting function. However, this is to be used only for the purpose of advising the city's IT staff of any technical concerns or issues. The public may also submit written public comments to be audibly read into the record by the city clerk during the public portion of any remote public meeting of the city council. Comments can be submitted by regular mail or by email to asabi@hackensack.org. Comments received less than 5 hours before the start of a meeting may be carried to the next meeting. Any person who actually speaks during the public comment portion of a remote public meeting may not also have a comment read into the record. The city clerk will stop reading a written comment into public record once it reaches the 3-minute limit. Duplicate written comments may be summarized and noted for the record in a consistent manner.
okay. Frank, can you bring the flag up, please? Would everybody please rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the
of the United States of America
America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And with that, we will move right into the agenda. Vinny, it's all you.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 1 is a resolution regarding the opioid litigation, which we had discussed previously that with the city attorney, and that we are taking part in that particular litigation. The information is attached. We have item number 2 is regarding the committee appointments and the availability that we have for some residents to take part in. We have several or numerous openings that the public should be aware of. The Condo Co-op Board has 8 openings. The Hackensack Alliance to Prevent Alcoholism and Drug Abuse has some multiple openings. The Rent Stabilization Board has 2 regular openings and 3 alternates. The Shade Tree Committee, they have 2 openings. Stigma Free Board has multiple openings, and the Veterans Advisory Board has 2 open spots. If any Hackensack resident wishes to be part of these volunteer boards, they can apply with the city clerk's office and get a citizen leadership form, or they can go online, and the forms are available online as well. So we're looking to fill a lot of those spots. Next is regarding the zoning ordinance, and we have the zoning officer, Bridget McLaughlin here on, and she is going to do a short presentation.
Vinny, this is Kathy. Before we move on, with the openings, is it posted, the ones that are open on the website, so people, if they didn't hear this, they could see it? Or if not, could we get the short
I'll
list?
make sure that the actual openings are listed.
Yeah, just a short list, then people could
Okay.
see if they're interested. Thanks so
Okay.
much.
Frank, could you let Bridget in?
Yes, I can. You also want Fran as well, right?
Yes.
They are rejoining as panelists.
Hello, Mayor, Deputy Council Benny. Hello.
Hey, Bridget.
Waiting for Fran. In the interest of time, we're gonna let Fran start, do his presentation, and I'll make comments afterwards.
Fran, you there?
Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Mayor, members of the council. I'm here this evening to give you a short presentation on the progress of the zoning ordinance that we've been working on with Bridget and the zoning department for the last year, over a year. I'm just trying to see if I can get my slides to work. Okay, so it's been a long time coming in terms of an overhaul to the ordinance. We started this process back in August of 2020. The last time the document was actually really fully updated was back in 2005. So it's been 16 years, and was in dire need of really an overhaul and making sure that we brought the codes up to current standards, as well as working through all of the issues and the inconsistencies that were in the previous ordinance. This evening, we're presenting to you a draft. It's my understanding that the first reading will be on January 11th, with then a presentation to the planning board subsequent to that, and then back for a second reading at the end of January. So there are a few things that are still kind of in progress, but just to give you an update of where we are, there were multiple steering committee meetings. There were meetings with staff and professionals throughout the process. I mentioned we've been doing this for almost a year and a half now. So there's been a lot of back and forth with the city in terms of what the document now looks like. The overall goals for the plan were really to create a much clearer, more concise document to protect the city from oversights and omissions that were in the previous documents, and to clean up the inconsistencies and inaccuracies that that document had in it for the better part of 16 years. In regards to cleanup and clarification, some of the things that this document has in particular is it removed a number of the unenforceable language that was in the previous document. And for example, what is still the current zoning ordinance, I'll call it the previous ordinance for the time being, is that there are a number of conditional uses identified in the previous zoning ordinance with no conditions to those conditional uses. So oftentimes what developers would come in and identify a conditional use and ask where the conditions were, and it left the zoning officer and the zoning department in a difficult position, because there should always be conditions with conditional uses. So that's all been cleaned up. In addition, there have been standards that have been put in place, not just for conditional uses, but for other uses as well. We've provided a lot of missing definitions, and we've updated a number of missing definitions. One of the biggest omissions from the previous zoning ordinances was the difference between impervious and building coverage. There was a building coverage definition, but no impervious coverage for the entire property. So that's been clarified. Another major one that I think is important to note would be the home occupation has been redefined within the definition. So there was a complete overhaul to the definitions, which were also in dire need. In terms of the modernization, we've included the new state requirements for the electrical vehicles, for the 5G equipment standards. Mr. Kleinman is still working on that. We're working with his office on the final language of that, which we believe will be in for the January 11th document. We've included the cannabis overlay zones, as well as a number of recommended zoning changes, and I'll talk about those at the end of my presentation. In addition, we identified, and we're working through the language of off-site track improvements. The draft document that you have in your hands does not have the final language that we're working with Clyde Otis's office on. We expect that to be completed again by January 11th. In addition, I mentioned we've got enhanced performance standards and buffer standards. So overall, the document has really been put together in a much cleaner and easier, more comprehensible manner. And I'll give you an example of that. So on the right, you see what is the current, or I'll just call it the previous zoning ordinance. This is what the ordinance looks like for the R50. You can see that it lists the permitted uses and accessory uses and conditional uses, and then it has the bulk standards underneath it. And what we did in going through this document is we created a series of charts which allowed for a much cleaner understanding of what is permitted, what is conditional. And so that allows everybody to clearly identify what those uses are and what uses are permitted in which locations. Previous zoning ordinance often referred back to a previous zone. So in other words, in R100, we refer back to an R50, which would refer back to an R4, which would refer back to an R2. And so it became very confusing in terms of what uses were actually permitted and what the bulk standards were. So this is just some of the charts that are identified in the document that we think make it much clearer and easier to comprehend and read, both from the zoning officer's perspective, but also from the developer's perspective. In addition, we've created new definitions for live work, for recycling centers, for urban hydroponic farming, as well as for home occupational. So the document really puts all the information into a much clearer, crisper, easier, understandable report. We did the same thing with the bulk standards that we did with the permitted uses. And so you can see on the right, again, this is the previous zoning ordinance, which shows you the R50, and at the bottom, it identifies the area, yard, and bulk standards, and it goes down, and you can see where those are listed for the different R50 for one family versus non-residential. Our document goes through, and the new ordinance has a clear, understandable chart, which goes through and clearly shows the differences between the variety of different zones and what the minimum lot width is, the front yard width, the interior setback requirements are. In addition, you can see that we have included the maximum building coverage, which was in the previous document. We've also included now a line called maximum lot coverage, which is located right through here. So that was never part of the old ordinance, the previous ordinance. In addition, we've identified the densities that are permitted in the different zones. In some zones, we have changed the density and reduced some of the densities that were permitted in the previous zone that are now identified in this new document. And here are some of the other examples of the charts that are in there. Again, very understandable, easy to read for both the development community as well as for the zoning officer. In addition to clearing up those types of components of the document, we provided supplemental design standards for a variety of different uses, as well as providing conditional standards for all those uses that were conditional in the report. And so now when somebody looks at a conditional use, they actually have a section of the zoning ordinance they can go and look at, identify what that use is, and see what the specific conditions of that use are. So that gives the zoning officer some clearer understanding. The difference between a supplemental use and a conditional use is that you can seek a variance off of a supplemental use, whereas that through a C variance, which would still allow an applicant to go to the planning board, but a conditional use would be a D variance. If they don't meet the conditional use, it's a D variance, and they'd have to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We also included upgraded and new signage standards, sign ordinance, and this was a combination of the existing sign ordinances that the document had, whereas we put them together, clarified them, and then we've done some sign ordinances from other municipalities, and we took what we thought were the best components of those and incorporate them as well in terms of the sizes and uses that we're recommending. And then you can see some of these on the right is the new document. So you can see under standards for conditional uses, you can see how these conditions would then be things that people would have, that you'd have to meet as part of an application. In terms of the zoning map itself, and I'm going to switch to the next page because the map's a little bit larger. So we've made some recommendations to changes to the zoning map, and I'll kind of go through a few of those. The B2A, we removed this entirely from the document because it is now a redevelopment plan, so there's no need for there to be a B2A zone. We removed the R2A zone because the only difference between the R2A and the R2 zone was that the R2A zone permitted garden apartments, and since garden apartments aren't something that's getting built, we didn't think that it was necessary to have both garden apartments, both the R2 and the R2A zone, so that was removed. We rezoned all of the M1 into the B3, and predominantly that was done because most of the previous I shouldn't say all, most of the M1 has been, I'm sorry, no, all the M1 was rezoned to B3 and the M2 were rezoned to M1. The reason why we did that is a lot of the M1 zones were located around and within residential zones. So you can see down here where this B3 is located. This was previously an M1 zone, and its location or proximity to residential we didn't think was as appropriate. So we changed and recommended changing that to a B3. We then took all the M2 zones, which really are located in this location and then as well as this location, and we turned them into M1 zones. We removed the HCS zone, which was the former hospital zone, because there is a redevelopment plan that's been adopted, which superseded the underlying HCS zone. So there was no need to have the HCS zone in the zoning ordinance any longer. And then we rezoned all the B5 to B4, predominantly because it was just redundant in terms of the uses. And then the other piece that we recommended is between the downtown rehabilitation area, which is State Street here, and the railroad. We recommended a new zone be created called an R4 zone, essentially allowing for the ability to have more of a 4-story or less residential brownstone type of development pattern that we thought would be complementary to both the downtown on a much lower and less dense scale, and also transition into the R3B and the R2. This recommendation is zoning, the master plan reexamination study that was adopted a couple of years ago. So we're really kind of moving that forward as well. And then finally, part of the adoption process, as I mentioned, tonight is really just a draft of the ordinance for everybody to be able to take a look at and understand. It's my understanding that the first reading will be on January 11th. We'll then present this to the planning board, I believe, on January 12th. And then a second reading will happen either at the end of January or 1st of February. It's my understanding also that the city had previously contracted with someone to update the zoning map and to digitize it so that it was easier to understand from the zoning officer's perspective when a property came up for question, exactly what that property was zoned. We're working with Bridget in her office as well as with the firm to give them the information they need. And I'll end with this, the zoning ordinance is intended to be a living document, meaning that we believe that there will be times over the course of the next few years that the city will have to come in and make some minor modifications to some of the items that are identified in this zoning ordinance. But we think that that if you don't adopt it, that there'll always be some changes that need to be made. So we believe we've gotten the document to a point where it should be considered for adoption, and that we still understand there'll be some amendments that'll be necessary moving forward. In addition, we believe that there are some other chapters in the city's zoning code. There are 182 chapters, and the zoning ordinance only represents one of those chapters, chapter 175. So we believe with the changes that are identified in chapter 175 of the zoning ordinance, that there are a number of other chapters we believe are going to need to be updated to simply make sure that the cross references of those ordinances match with the new zoning ordinance. And we've identified those with the help of Bridget's group, and they're listed here from property maintenance code all the way down to the mobile food vending. And we believe that those can be done either first of the year or shortly thereafter the zoning ordinance is adopted. And I believe that's all I have.
Okay, I'm just gonna hop in for a minute and add, first of all, I want to thank Fran and Dan and Gabe and DMR for working really hard on this. I really made them work hard. And Fran will tell you, I presented to them a lot of different situations that comes through the zoning office frequently, that we have engineers and architects, residents, professionals who just couldn't understand this ordinance. There were so many ambiguous sections and sections that weren't even consistent with the current municipal land use law. So that opened us up to, some issues too. So there was, in the beginning, they were redlining this, and then so much we had to change, it was impossible. We had to actually rewrite a lot of this whole entire ordinance. As Fran stated earlier, this is 16 years. That should never be really, so, now we'll have a great document that we're working from that's consistent with the law. The definitions are consistent with Moskowitz. There's, trending, then it's consistent with our master plan, the visions that you all have for the city. So, and now we have a pulse on it. We're, and like Fran said, if we have to make minor modifications, we will address those. And there are a couple of things that we're going to look in the new year for the mayor and council to give us some direction on. I just want to mention the impervious coverage, how important that is, because we were having a lot of engineers and architects that were interpreting that ordinance and coming up with totally skewed numbers. So there was no consistency there. And now we have restaurants permitted in all zones, which I think is really important for, the city as we're moving forward and incentivizing people to come in and want to bring businesses into the city with all this great development. And I also want to make sure that everybody realizes that vapor tobacco manufacturing, refining, and sales has been prohibited in cities. That's something that, if that's an issue, we can address before the 11th. But again, like Fran said, there's other sections of the ordinance that have to marry each other to be enforceable, and they're going to have to be updated. So it's really important that we address those. A lot of times this is all done together, but in this case, because the ordinance really needed to be overhauled, we had to tackle that first. And I think we have a really great document. I think we're really proud of it. Proud of everybody working on it, and all my department heads too for sharing with us and their comments. And, now we have a really great document we can work from.
Okay, thank you, Bridget. Council, any comments?
Good job, Bridget. Thank you.
Great job, everybody. I know it was a long haul, Bridget, and we really appreciate you and Fran and Fran's office and Bridget, everybody in your office that pulled this together. I mean, over the years, folks, this had just evolved. What happened was when they needed a small change, instead of making the change, somehow they just added a new classification or clarification that was similar, but just off by a little bit, and made it so confusing. So even to just go through and do all that analysis, and I mean, this was a ton of work. And, really make it so much. I love the matrix, Fran. I think that really helps, because people can come in and just look at it and quickly understand instead of reading through paragraph after paragraph. So I think all of you did a wonderful job, and the council really, really appreciates it. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
We could not have done it without Bridget. She's been a huge and integral part of this process. And you have somebody that genuinely cares every day, calls and asks questions, and we try to help where we can. And I'm hoping that this document is going to make her life a little bit easier. because I know how hard she works to make sure that, we get everything right every time.
Thank you, Fran. I drove Fran crazy. That's the truth. I drove him crazy.
My kind of girl.
But I also want to comment quickly on the map. The map is my understanding that it is a state requirement requiring us all to go to digital also, but that digital map is gonna, once it's integrated and implemented in the city, it's gonna have all the overlays. Now, we're gonna have to do the back end work on that and uploading the information, but it's like Fran said, everything's evolving, but once we get there, it's going to be amazing. And it's going to be great for the residents. I mean, they could, now they'll have an ordinance that they can understand and read. And now they can have a map where they can go right in. It's a GIS platform and zoom in on their property. And it's a really exciting time for all of this coming together.
Thank you so much, Bridget and Fran. That was a lot of work.
Thank you, Frank.
My pleasure.
Yeah, Fran and his guys did an enormous amount of work.
Dan did an amazing job.
Dan was amazing.
Amazing.
Frank is losing all the hair.
That's right. That's right. Thank you for noticing, Leo.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions or?
No, but if you're not going to be on for the rest of the meeting, we want to wish you a wonderful holiday, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year.
Yes,
Thank you.
all-
Health to everybody. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Enjoy.
Yep.
We need
Thanks for
it.
the-
We need it.
Thanks for the great work, guys. Okay, what do you got?
All right, next up is the Johnson Park Sports Complex. The renderings, I believe Ryan's going to take the lead on this. And Susan.
I just sent Susan the request.
They're in now.
Yep.
There's Sue.
Hi. Could you also let Jeff Curry and Pradeep in on the call from DMR? Frank.
I see Jeff. What was the other name? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. It might just be Jeff tonight.
There's a Kurt Vierhelig from DMR on. Is that somebody else?
Yeah, Kurt, if his on, yes, his also.
Yeah, Kurt's on too.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
added both.
So thank you. Good evening, City Manager, City Clerk, and Mayor and Council. We do have DMR on this evening to present the rendering of Johnson Park Sports Facility, to discuss the coloring as well as the different materials they're proposing for consideration. With that being said, I turn it over to either Jeff or Kurt.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Susan. I'm going to be presenting the exterior renderings of the new Johnson Park Sports Facility that we've been developing. Let's see here. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And can everyone see that? I pulled up the one with 3 renderings.
Yes, thank you, Kurt.
Yes. Okay, great. So, so we've been working on developing the project along, and after approval of the plan, we started working on the exterior and the aesthetic and the look of the building, the massing, the materials, etc. So we have a series of images that are going to show the building from a few different vantage points, so we can get an idea of the building, the administration part of the building, and the field turf portions of the building. So on the top here, we have this is kind of what the main approach and main view of the building as you come in from River Road. So because of the location of the building and the configuration of the parking and the main entrance, kind of you approach the building kind of from the side, and so as we're coming in, you kind of you view from the west side, And the building, because of the configuration and the relationship to the field house, is, very long, linear, programmed building element. So what our approach was to take that long, 340-foot long building program and break it down into different volumes. So as you can see here, we've clearly made the distinction between the two ends and the center portion. So the two ends are in some of the massing and the articulation of the windows and the fenestration also relate to the program spaces that are on the inside. So that's important to know also in terms of why some of the elements are maybe solid panel versus where other areas where we have some areas of window and glazing, and then in the center there's more areas of glazing. So primarily the two gray portions which kind of flank the main entrance are the storage components and the larger meeting spaces such as the batting cage and the wrestling room. So both those kind of major components happen in the gray metal clad components. The gray metal areas are broken down further into a vertical patterned metal panel and a horizontal pattern metal panel, both represented here in the light gray and the dark gray. So as on the front corner here, we have the identification and the name of the complex. As we proceed down, we've got some of that panel, and again, in behind this area is the batting cages. We've got some clear story higher windows. Those windows will be like translucent panel, so very durable, nearly indestructible. That allows light into the space, but does not they're not breakable. So bringing as much light onto the interior is something that we try to do in all spaces that are occupied. So we're also doing that to create some sort of different mass and material breakdown along the facade of the building. In the center portion, where the major program components are that will be used by the patrons and the athletes going in and out of the facility, is centered here. So in the middle, because of the length of the building, because of the size of the building, we wanted to create a vertical element that kind of identified where the main entrance was. So while as you approach, you will obviously eventually at some point get to the entrance, which is in the middle here, having that vertical element with that lobby with a little bit of a higher ceiling, and we're articulated here in the blue panel. That's kind of the focal point and kind of the main entrance to the building, and then it's also complemented by that horizontal blue canopy. The material on that there'll be a brick, a two-color brick, like a chocolate brown brick and a dark gray brick as a banding, and then there'll be a base to it. And then we can see we have a variety of a nice rhythm of floor to ceiling glazing to allow as much light to penetrate into the program spaces as possible. So I'm going to just go around the building and just kind of show a couple different areas. So here's the aerial. So on the right side, as you can see here, kind of that entrance all the way to the right, the driveway that comes down, and then you kind of turn left. That's the approach, and that's the entrance into the site. So you can kind of get an idea about how the site sits, how the building sits on the site, and the approach, and the importance of the massing and the breakdown of the elements, and then the further use of the materials, which as I mentioned, are three different types of metal panel color. And as you can see on the right there, we brought in some brick, that chocolate brick, and then there's a dark kind of charcoal, dark black brick as that accent banding. We articulated a few other renderings. This rendering here is looking from the kind of the southeast, and what's in the foreground here, that is the field turf facility. And so the base of the field turf building will have a masonry brick material on that. And on the ends we'll be using a similar translucent, cow wall, translucent wall panel, which again, it's a durable, indestructible panel that allows diffuse light to penetrate into the building and illuminate the interior without the concern of breakage from all the sorts of athletic events that will be happening in there. So even though it's a glazed type opening, it's non-breakable. And then here's a view kind of looking towards the southeast, opposite on the entrance. And as you can see, the way that the massing and the material use on the building, how it's broke down. And then on the roof of the administration portion of the building will be the mechanical equipment. So as you can see here in that light gray, wrapping around, kind of set back from the face of the facade is going to be some mechanical screens. So once the final location of the equipment and those are determined, it's possible that some of this screening may be reduced, but for the purpose of this, we're showing kind of where we're anticipating that there'll be some screening of that mechanical equipment. And the remainder of the field, the turf building, the upper portions will be metal panel, and the roof will be standing seam metal roof. At this point, that's how we're expecting that the materiality is going to be developed moving forward. So that wraps up and summarizes what we're looking to do and what we're proposing for the new Johnson Park Sports Building. I'll just leave here. This is an opposite view of what the main entrance will look like, showing how that vertical blue metal clad element breaks that horizontal plane, kind of articulates the main entrance really nicely.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Kurt. We'd love to hear any feedback from mayor and council, city manager.
Yeah, I have a couple of
Regarding-
questions real
Sure.
quick. All right, on the front of the beautiful building, but on the front, I'm a little concerned. Do we have any snow load weight issues where the pitched roof comes down and meets the flat section where the mechanicals are going to be? And how is the drainage going to work on that?
Right. So there will be gutters along the outside, large gutters because of the size of the roof, which is for a facility in a building like this, that's common. So there will be gutters on each end, and the roof itself of the admin building, because it is lower, the roof will be designed to accommodate the snow load and snow drift of any buildup that would happen. The roof, we will have snow guards, numerous layers of snow guards and ice guards. So to reduce the amount of snow and ice that will be, that would slide down onto the roof below, because that is definitely a concern. And once the location of the mechanical equipment is identified, we're also considering installing maybe some small gable roof elements in front of the mechanical equipment to further reduce the chance that anything will come down and actually hit onto the equipment. So
is this a metal roof?
the right now, yes.
So are there any vertical slats, in other words, like you see on most, like on a residential type steel metal
Yeah.
roof?
Yeah, there will be verticals, and that's where the snow guards will be attached to.
Kurt,
We might
are you
wanna-
saying, one second. Are you saying that what the roof that cover the field, right, is metal?
Yes,
And no fabric?
yes.
Okay, we'll talk later.
Yeah, looks like it's permanent. My only concern is I dealt with, when I was a property manager, I dealt with these and that's why as soon as I saw it, where,
Because the idea was supposed to be fabric.
well, the snow would most likely melt off the fabric. I don't know. On this case, when you have slotted steel roofs, it forms like almost like ice in between. And we actually had people getting injured. It was coming down so hard. So we
Yeah.
have to have snow breaks and or some type of melting device or something, because that's a massive load of snow on that roof.
Right,
Yeah.
so the roof of the turf building is not in the vicinity of any of the main entrance, as you can see. That's here.
Right.
We are concerned about whatever the snow that comes off or anything that's gonna fall onto the roof of the building. So we are concerned about that, and that's we're working on addressing that with numerous different techniques. So that is something that we are addressing.
Okay, we're gonna have to be careful too. I don't know if there's access for people to walk beyond the building, but yeah, it's a straight run down there.
The
Right
on the ground,
on the back side of this building.
on the back side, right now, there's no, we're not anticipating that there'll be sidewalks back there.
Okay.
So, yeah, that definitely, that is something that we're concerned about, and that will be, we will be addressing that
All
with
right.
those techniques that I mentioned.
Okay, anybody else from the council? All right, thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Have a great holiday and a great Christmas, everybody.
You too.
You too.
Okay, number 4.
This is actually number 5. The stormwater update from the project managers.
Okay. Susan?
Hey, good evening. Just give me 1 second. I wanted to share my screen. Again, thank you everyone for having us. We are doing an update on the active construction sewer improvement, as well as we wanted to introduce some above grade improvements at our parks. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen. And as usual, we'll have Ryan speak to the active construction.
Good evening, everyone. The progress update is going to be from 12/7 to 12/13. Currently, there has been 1,894 lineal feet of structural lining has been installed, and 111 feet of stormwater box culvert has been installed. The box culvert is approximately 5 feet by 4 feet, and each section is about 8 feet long. The active construction contractor has completed lot use stormwater improvements and is continuing installing sanitary sewer improvements on Union Street along with environmental sampling. The sampling is to test the soil, see if we could possibly use it in other areas in the city. Heavy cleaning and inspection of the structural lining has been performed. Currently, post-inspection videos of the lining are being reviewed by our engineers. Thank you. And that's it.
Thank you, Ryan. So I just wanted to note all of the other sewer projects or drainage improvements project that we touched upon last week are all under design phase or pre-award phase. So there is no major update to provide today. So that being said, we are going to present instead city parks. First, I wanted to talk about a open space master plan that the DCA prepared for us. We worked about 2 years on this plan, and that exhibit was distributed within the city as well as it is uploaded on the city website. You could find it by going to Building Land Use, Planning Board, Zoom meeting files and scrolling down to open space. I usually just do a Control F to get there, and it is the final draft. Once you click on it, you'll find a 105-page document, which you could view online, and a hard copy is available at the clerk's office to view in person if you wish. This open space master plan talks about the city's intent for all of our open space areas, and it would be wonderful for anyone to review and provide feedback. It was presented during the planning board meeting earlier this month, but we are holding another meeting in the first quarter of 2022 for review and approval. We'd love to hear any feedback prior to then. That being said, I'll move on to parks that we went in for pre-design or grant applications. So we have Columbus Park and Carver Park, where we will improve the playground at Columbus Park and the basketball courts at Carver Park. I'm just going to find the rendering associated with that. So here we have Columbus Park. Oh shoot, that's talking about, oh, I'm sorry. We didn't include the renderings for the grant phase. I am sorry, but what I can do is kind of zone in to what's not colored. And what you see over here that's not colored are the playground structures that we intend on improving should we receive that grant. Okay, I don't have one for Carver Park, so I apologize. I'm not going to speak on that. But basically, the basketball courts are not in great shape, so we're hoping to improve those. Okay, the projects in design or agency review is Johnson Park Sports Facility, which Kurt had presented on from DMR previously. Also, the Johnson Park overall master plan is being reviewed by NJDEP. And also, we also have the Fushini master plan. The design is underway. The rendering that we have tonight is for the Johnson Park master plan. Again, Kurt presented on the elevations and the exterior. And the master plan itself, oops. This is the whole park, where again, here's River Road, and here's the Hackensack River. So here's the access drive. Here is the greenhouse, and this rendering isn't 100% updated, but we have the community garden here, parking here, and the sports facility that Kurt spoke about here. The orientation of this tennis courts will change during the final design phase, but we have tennis courts here and volleyball courts here. The turf field, for the turf soccer field that was previously returfed, I think it was the year before last, is going to stay as is. Okay. So in bid phase, we have Columbus Park on tonight's agenda. The city intends on awarding this project. And within that project, we have the court improvements for basketball, futsal, and tennis. I'm going to refer back to that rendering that's highlighted actually. So here we have the tennis court and the futsal court. So this tennis court will work as both tennis and volleyball. Here we have the two basketball courts that are also being improved within that project. And finally, in construction phase, we have Johnson Park underground utilities for the sports facility and Sty Park, where we'll see a new restroom concession building, a pavilion, playground surfaces, which will be improved, and various amenities. So the rendering for that is right here. Here is where the concession stand will, or the concession restroom building will be. The pavilion will be here. The actual playground structures will remain in place, but we are improving the surface to this rubberized material. And here we'll have some picnic areas. Also, we'll provide the smooth surface walkable area that's ADA compliant. That being said, that concludes our portion of this presentation, and we welcome any questions or comments. Oops.
Okay, council. Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful holiday.
Thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay, I need a motion to open to the public.
Sorry, I was muted. Offer.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Von Rudenberg,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Canestrino,
Aye.
Councilmember Pataglia,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll. Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Mayor LaBrus.
Aye. Anybody from the public who would like to speak, please give your name and the city you live in to the clerk, and you will have 3 minutes. Frank, any hands raised?
I don't see any hands raised.
And don't forget, we need the clock.
Okay, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Motion to close to the public.
Offer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. See everybody back here at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Deb. Deb, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You might want to consider having Ally read, because it's going to be a lot on your voice. You can hear
She's gonna
yourself
read,
straining.
she's gonna read the resolutions.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Right.
Have her read the whole thing, Deb. She does a fine job. Let your voice rest.
All right, I'll talk to her.
All right, honey, why don't you take it?
I'll do
easy?
it. It's fine.
Strain your throat.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.